Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the TradeStation Masterclass. My name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education for TradeStation Securities. Today, we're going to talk about one of the features of TradeStation that allows you to use a lot of creativity, which is drawing tools. And we're going to dive deeper into the functionality, see what's available, how you can take advantage of them, and some things that hopefully are going to help you utilize this feature of the TradeStation trading platform. Before we get started, the usual disclosures, keep in mind that every symbol and idea that I talk about is for educational purposes only. These are not recommendations of TradeStation. And although we may go into how to interpret some of the drawing tools that we're going to be using today, just to make sure that you're aware that these are examples and not recommendations. If you're trading futures or options, the disclosures are right there at the bottom. And any examples we use, of course, is no guarantee of future results. For additional information on these disclosures, go to www.tradestation.com/important-information. All right, I see the chat is pretty busy today. Welcome, everyone. I see some familiar names. So welcome and thank you for taking time out of your schedules to be here and learn a little bit about our technology. Let's switch over here to my TradeStation platform. I have a chart of Apple, and the first thing that I wanted to talk about is the drawing tools themselves and how to access them. Everybody knows that we have a drawing menu right here at the top of the chart. I said everybody knows, but I guess if you didn't know, now you know. All the drawing tools are going to be accessible from that menu. If you are the type of trader, the type of TradeStation user that likes to draw on the chart, because that's, you know who you are. There's that type of trader that likes to, put text annotations and do some squares and some arrows and trend lines and whatnot. If that's you, then it's convenient to have a toolbar with all these drawing tools so that you don't have to go to this drop down every time you need a drawing tool. So for that, we have right there at the bottom of this drop down, we have toggle drawing toolbar. Now, for many years, we didn't have this, but this allows you to very quickly enable and disable the drawing toolbar. If I click there, you'll see the drawing toolbar right here on the left-hand side of the chart analysis window. It'll take some time for you to become familiar with how the buttons look and what each button represents. However, if you take your mouse cursor and you hover over any of these, it should tell you the name of what the tool is and what the tool is. So that's the drawing toolbar. So we're going to use the drawing toolbar today just for familiarity, so we can start utilizing the icons and understanding which ones they are. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about the buttons that are down here. All right, the very bottom one says automatic scaling range. The automatic scaling range only applies when you are looking at a fixed or custom scale. What that is referring to is the price scale here on the right-hand side. Sometimes you may make adjustments to it, like in the click and drag functionality that allows you to squeeze the price scale. Now, if you do that, you do have the option to reset it right here at the bottom, but the button here on the drawing toolbar has the exact same effect. If you click it, it'll set the scale to automatic again. Now, a lot of times, I guess they added it to the drawing toolbar because many times you're going to be drawing things on the TradeStation chart that may extend outside of the chartable area. And you may want to bring space in your chart in order to visualize those drawing tools. If that's the case, then you have a very quick button for you to reset your scale to automatic. If you want to remove the drawing toolbar, just go to drawing and then click on toggle drawing toolbar one more time. So you may need it at one point, and then you can always remove it very easily as well. Starting from the top, you have just the arrow pointer. Crosshair pointer is what is on by default, I think when you first install TradeStation 10, this is what comes on. But if you'd rather have an arrow, actually, no, they do the same thing. That's interesting. So not sure why they still have that arrow pointer, crosshair pointer. Okay. So the pointer changes from arrow to a crosshair. You still have the crosshairs on the chart. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but this is was added recently to a newer update of TradeStation. If you don't like the crosshairs that follow your mouse pointer over the chart, you can disable that in the settings window, I believe. So if you go to settings and click on window, we can go to the general tab. Let's see. It's somewhere here. Not here. So cancel. It's going to be settings, and it's going to be in the preferences of chart analysis. So settings, preferences, go to the general tab, display. Here it is, display. And the option is somewhere here. It says, display crosshair lines with down click only. So if you put a check here, display crosshair lines with down click only, they'll go away. So you don't see the crosshairs any longer, but if you click and hold the mouse pointer, they come back and somehow give you an axis location, x-axis, y-axis location of where you are in the chart. So if you find the crosshairs to be a little bit distracting as you move around the chart, you have a way of disabling them and only see them if you're clicking and holding on the chart background. Again, settings, preferences, display. I'm going to set it to the way that comes on by default, which is with the crosshairs on. So now if I move my mouse around, I have the crosshairs. Excuse me. Okay, so let's go and talk a little bit about lines, trend lines and horizontal lines, which are drawing tools that you're going to use very frequently. I use horizontal lines in my, I use horizontal lines in my getting started classes because I feel like horizontal lines are a very easy way to set up an alert on your chart. Here we have a chart of Apple, and Apple is trading at $172.67, as you can see right here on the price scale. That's today's trading activity. I may be monitoring the price of Apple, and I may be interested in buying some shares only if it drops below 172. It's been below 172 earlier in the day, but it's kind of recovered from that low and it's pointing upward. We have a green candle today, but let's suppose that, I'm optimistic and I'm waiting for the price to drop again to 172. And I just want to be alerted if it does. So what I do is I go to the drawing menu and click horizontal, or if I'm using the toolbar button right here from the toolbar, I guess it's this one right here. Okay. You hover over it, it's horizontal. It says horizontal line on the tooltips. Trying to drop this horizontal line right at 172 sometimes is challenging. So if you're drawing something on the chart and you want that extra precision, like the precision of where you want to draw that horizontal line, click and hold on the background of the chart. And this gives you this floating window with the exact price of where the horizontal line is going to be. So I can bring it down to 172 even and drop it there. I believe I've changed the default color of my horizontal line from what it is, by default. And I think I've also changed the thickness. I like my lines to be a little bit thicker than what the default is. The default is kind of thin. If you want to make changes to the horizontal line before we go into any further analysis, just right click on that horizontal line, or you can also double click on it and go to edit horizontal line. And you have the style, which allows you to change the thickness and also the color. If you want to play around with transparency, and a lot of times users feel like the drawing tools are kind of in your face because they're very bright in color. But if you want to tone down that color, you can use the transparency slider to apply a certain percentage opacity over that line, and it just blends into the background, which is really nice. For this demonstration, I'm just going to use, 100% opacity so that, it's a solid color. Okay. Another thing that I wanted to point out here is that going back to our example that we want to be notified if Apple drops below 172, I do have to come here and turn on the alert. You're going to notice that every drawing tool in TradeStation has this ability for you to turn on an alert. And the lines get hot. And when the price activity touches them, then you're going to get alerted. And this is true for every drawing tool. We're going to see how that's very nicely done, because even on something like the Fibonacci retracement, which is a more advanced mathematical calculation, you can turn on alerts so that if the price touches any of the Fibonacci retracement lines, you would get alerted. I did want to bring up alerts because in horizontal lines and trend lines, the alert settings are a little bit different. When you enable alert, you have an additional drop down here that gives you 3 different behaviors. We have a breakout intra bar, breakout on close, and breakout inter bar. The breakout intra bar, as the name implies, is when the price breaks, the horizontal line within the bar. So for example, if this current candle that is building at the moment would actually drop to 172, the whole candle is crossing through the 172. And that's why it's called a breakout intra bar, because it's happening inside the bar. You can set it to breakout on close, which means that it'll wait until the close of the candle to tell you if there's been a break of that horizontal line. Now, a lot of times, if you are probably looking for a cross at the close so that it's a fixed price and it's not fluctuating anymore, maybe you want to do it on the close. And the last one is breakout inter bar, which a lot of users find confusing. But what it means is that, let's suppose that this current candle is not touching the horizontal line. So let's say, for example, it's somewhere up here at 174. If there are news affecting the price of Apple and there's a huge drop, let's say that from 174 it drops to 170, there's no actual touch of the line. There is a jump over the line, yes, but there's no touching the price. The breakout intra bar, which we talked about at the very beginning, it's when it actually touches, the price. But this third one, which is a breakout inter bar, not only will cover you if the price activity touches the line, but also if it jumps the line. And that's what the inter refers to, when the line is not really touching the bar, but it's between one candle and the other. There's a gap, and the line falls right inside that gap. There's no touch, but it's an inter bar breakout. So as long as we understand, the behavior of these alerts, we'll get the behavior that we are expecting. Good morning, everyone. Let's see, a couple of questions here. From one, do we have the anchored VWAP in the drawing tools? No, VWAP is not part of the drawing tool. It's more of an analysis technique one. You'd have to go to studies and add indicator to find it. How do we get the drawing toolbar to stay on my chart? Again, on the drawing menu, you find a little option right there at the bottom that says toggle drawing toolbar, which gives you all these little buttons on the left-hand side. We is asking, can you show how to do a moving average on volume display? We not at this moment. We're talking about drawing tools, but I do invite you to join me on Wednesdays, where we open up the floor for Q&A, and then we can address your platform questions there. Wednesday, we do a getting started class. Is there a way to keep the horizontal line? This is a question from Amy. keep the horizontal line selected for more than one use. So I don't need to select it each time I need it. Um, you know, drawing tools are sensitive to clicks. So if I click on the line, you're going to see those white dots appear, across the line. I'm not sure if you see them, but anytime you click on a drawing tool, those white dots that appear on top of the lines just means that the object has been selected. But if I click on the background, it's unselecting that object. So you have that control of whether the drawing tool is selected or not. So can you keep the horizontal line selected? If you click somewhere else, no. You just have to be aware that it'll only be selected as you click on it, okay? Can you put the toolbar across the top is a question from Marilyn. No, although you can do specific toolbar buttons and add them to the top. And I, excuse me, and I say this because a lot of times you may only use a certain number of tools. Let's say that you only use, horizontal and trend lines. And those are the two main tools that you use. Instead of having, the full drawing toolbar here on the left-hand side, this is what I would do. I would go to drawing, remove my toolbar, go on my toolbar right here at the very top, and here at the very end, the little button says toolbar options. I click there and I click on customize. See, customize. And from here, I go to the drawing menu, the drawing category, and let's say that I want to look for horizontal line. Here it is. And I'm going to click on that tool and I'm going to drag it up here. I'm going to put it right after settings. And then I'm going to use also trend line. Go. I'm going to click it and put it up here. And maybe I use, I don't know, maybe I'm also using Fibonacci retracement line. So I'm going to put that here, drag it up there. So you can technically, customize, and then I just have to click on apply. So you can definitely customize the toolbar at the top and add the tools that you need. In this case, I can click on horizontal line and just add another one without having to go to the drawing menu. So feel free to customize your drawing tools and add them to the top of your TradeStation if you need to. How do we remove all drawing lines at the same time? Great question, Tanya. Let me go over here to my horizontal line and add a few. Okay, let's say that I go here overboard and I add a whole bunch of horizontal lines. That at a certain moment, I wish I can remove them all together without, doing one by one. All you need to do is come here to the drawing menu, and there's an option here that says remove drawing objects. You click there, and all you need to do is select the ones that you want to delete. For example, I want to delete my horizontal lines. I don't have any other drawing tools drawn, so that's why they all appear grayed out. But I select horizontal line, click OK, and they all go away at once. Can you talk about the regression tool in this session? Yes, we'll talk about the regression tool. Is there a button to change the background color? There is. You just go to settings and window, you can change the color there. Can I click and drag a horizontal line? Most definitely. Let me do that line at 172. And then I can click that line and push it down or up if I want to. Just click on the line and drag it up or down. Okay, and then you can modify the price that it's on. All right. Can the crosshairs for the cursor be modified? Not at this moment. All right. Can you draw a trend line or horizontal line in one chart and automatically draw it in another time frame? We're going to talk about that in a little moment. Ion and Barbara, your questions are really good. Let me, for example, can you draw a short horizontal line, say from May 5th to May 25th? For that type of drawing, like from May 5th to May 25th, right here. So if you wanted to do a line, more like a segment, instead of a trend line. The trend line, the name implies that you're drawing it against a trend. But for example, to Barbara's example, if I wanted to draw a line from this bottom wick to this bottom wick, maybe I've identified some support, I want to draw a line, not a horizontal line, but a line. I'm going to click here on my trend line, and I'm going to click from that low over here to this low. So it does have a downward sloping angle, but let's say that you want to truncate that. You don't want it to extend all the way to the right. All you need to do is right click and uncheck the option to extend right. And that way you have a segment between, one point and the other. I'm going to select the line and remove it. And to Ion's questions, can you draw a horizontal line on one chart and be on another time frame? You just have to be very, because one of the things that I wanted to also mention is that drawing tools in TradeStation are exclusive to the window where they're drawn and the symbol that they're drawn on, which means that to answer your question directly, if you draw something on this chart, it will not automatically appear on a separate chart. It doesn't do that. TradeStation doesn't support that feature. However, let's suppose that I bring this chart in and I draw that horizontal line. Let me go here to horizontal line. I'm going to draw it right here, close to maybe 172. If not, at 172. There we go. So we draw that trend line. That trend line, the TradeStation chart knows that you drew it on Apple and you drew it on a daily time frame. But if I go to a 5-minute time frame, let me just change the time frame to a 5-minute. I still see that trend line on the chart because it's associated with the symbol, and it doesn't matter what time frame I'm using, the drawing tool should remain. Now, if I want to see the same drawing on multiple time frames, this is what I would do. I'm going to change this to daily, right click, copy the window, and right click, paste the window. A copy, it just creates a duplicate of that chart. And then I can change this to 5-minute. And then I can right click, copy the window, right click, paste the window. And then I can make this a 30-minute. And I still have that trend line. Right click, copy the window, right click, paste the window. And maybe this is a 60-minute chart. So now let me go ahead and window and click on arrange all. So I'm looking at 4 different time frames of Apple, and they all have the exact same horizontal line because I duplicated the chart. But that's only because I'm duplicating it. It doesn't mean that if I draw something else here, let's draw something else. I'm going to draw another trend line, another horizontal line at 173. If I do that, this trend line, this horizontal line doesn't appear on the other charts because it's exclusive to the one that I draw it on. So some things to consider, because a lot of times, if you're expecting certain behavior and it doesn't happen, it may lead to frustration. So as long as we know how the functionality works and how to set our expectations, then there won't be any issues. All right. Perfect. Let's go ahead and take a look at other questions here. So let me go here to a chart analysis. All right. Perfect. There, of course, on the drawing menu, you're going to have some drawing tools that are of analytical nature, and some of drawing tools that means something to you. For example, if you want to make an annotation, like a text annotation, that is a very personal thing that means something to you. Maybe something happened and you want to annotate the chart. That is something that you can do. I'm going to go here to drawing, click on text, and maybe on this peak right here, I may say, this is my entry. Now, the text, of course, is going to have a particular size and color to it. If you right click on that text and you edit the text, you can change the font size. Of course, I'm going to change it here and make it bold so that it's visible, a little bit more visible, and then you can move that text around if you want. For any drawing tool that you draw in TradeStation, there's going to be an anchor point. And the anchor point to any text object is going to be the bar closest to it. So this is really cool, because if you leave the text here, that is anchored to the candlesticks. And as the candlesticks are going to move, towards the left, as new candles are pulling or are being pulled in for the new data, my text annotation will just follow the chart and be there, anchored. Find that very interesting. So feel free to right-click on any text annotation and edit the font size if you feel like the default text is a little bit too small. The same applies, for example, if I go here to drawing to arrows, rectangles, ellipses, all these are areas that you want to highlight in your chart that are not, analytical in nature. However, they do represent something for you. If I go to the rectangle, this will require me to do 2 clicks, the top left corner and the bottom right corner. Now, if I don't like the colors, again, just right click on that drawing tool and edit the rectangle. Let's say that I want to make the color some sort of a gray, maybe make it transparent so it blends with the background. And the line, I just want to make it white. So you can make any type of style changes and make those default if you want. If you want to tone down some of the colors, I know that the blue and the red is kind of intense on the TradeStation chart, and you can change those defaults if you want to. Okay, so enough about the non-analytical drawing tools. I guess everybody gets the point that you can just draw them on the chart and modify them. Right-click on the drawing tool, edit the drawing tool to make it look and feel the way you want. So let me go back here to drawing. If you go into the arrows, for example, you can change the size and the style of those arrows if you want to point to certain areas of the chart. Okay. The arc, even though it's sectioned here with some of the non-analytical ones, I find it interesting because it pretty much draws an arc type of tool, but it's going to be on its side. Let me show you exactly what I mean by that. So if I draw from this bottom to this top, okay, that's going to be my measurement. So from this bottom, 1 click to this top, is going to draw this line. And it may appear as if the arc is not really well drawn. But the reason for the way that it's drawn here is because it's taking that same measurement that you drew from the bottom to the top and extending that to the other side of the arc. And it's going to come very visual once you do the following. Right click on the arc, edit the arc, and then display the full arc. When you display the full arc is when you get the big picture of what TradeStation is trying to do. When I do that, this is the arc. You see, as I said at the very beginning, just think of an arc laid on its side, and whatever measurement you take that initiates the arc is going to be from the very, bottom or top side to the middle of the arc, the top middle section of the arc, and then it completes the arc that way. Interpretations of an arc, a lot of times when you draw an arc, some of the data points are going to be touching that arc. I usually don't want to provide an interpretation of drawing tools because there are so many different interpretations, and I usually recommend you go online, search, see what interpretation works for you, and then drill down on that interpretation. Because there is a lot of content about how to interpret certain drawing tools. I think as long as you know how the drawing tool works and how to draw it on the chart, then the interpretation comes next. Okay, so let me go ahead and remove that arc, reset my scale, and let's go back here to the drawing menu. All right, so let's start from the top again. So in the drawing, we had the arrow, the crosshairs, that just changes the look of your cursor. Andrew's pitchfork. Again, the Andrew's pitchfork is not something that TradeStation created. It's been around for decades. So if you're interested in the way that the Andrew's pitchfork forecasts price movement, then again, ton of information online. But how is it drawn on TradeStation though? Well, first you have to select either a top or a bottom, and that's going to be your starting point. I'm going to take this bottom. I'm just going to click there, 1 click, then I'm going to click on this top. And then from that point is where you draw the pitchfork, because those two clicks, or the first two clicks, are going to pretty much start the what I call the wick of the pitchfork, or the handle of the pitchfork. Once I bring it down to measure this retracement, I can click on this bottom, and that's where you have the Andrews pitchfork. It's called Andrews pitchfork because it looks like a pitchfork. And what it does is that you have your starting point here, A, your second point, B, and then your C point is going to draw a perpendicular line against that originating line. And that's what's going to determine, the other sides of the pitchfork, which is a pretty interesting concept. And sometimes when you draw it, it's very telling on how the price activity sometimes follows some of these lines. For example, by measuring the pitchfork in this uptrend for Apple and measuring this reversal, take a look at what happened next. All of these candles kind of just fall right on top of that side of this pitchfork. Is it coincidence? Maybe. I'll leave that up to you to determine, but I just find it interesting that sometimes if I draw some of these tools, the market data kind of aligns with some of the lines that are part of the tool. All right. Okay, let's see. Some questions. I want to make sure that I address some questions as we go along, because sometimes you do get questions that are related to the topic, and rather than having to come back, I can address those questions right here in the live presentation. If you do all your charting on one window, then accidentally delete it, have you lost all those drawings forever? Eric, good question. It's happened to me before. I have my TradeStation to respond to my clicking on the X. So if I were to remove this chart accidentally, yes, all my drawing tools will go with it. I would assume that you may have a saved version. So what I would do if I delete a window or a chart window accidentally is to close the workspace and don't save the changes, so that when I recover or open up the workspace again, I may have the same workspace with everything that I added to it. So try that, close the workspace without saving and see if it comes back. Okay. Can you selectively delete horizontal lines when your chart becomes so congested with them you can't manually select specific ones? There's two ways that you can delete horizontal lines. One by clicking on them, but if it's too congested and you're having difficulty clicking them, you can remove them all at once by going to drawing and then going to remove drawing objects. Okay. Perfect. Let's go ahead and take a look at some other tools here. Let me remove the pitchfork. I'm just going to click on it once and then delete. Let's go to the drawing menu. GANFAN, very interesting analysis tool. I'm going to take this bottom and I'm just going to do one click, because the GANFAN just requires one click and then it draws. Let me go ahead and make those lines a little bit thicker because they're kind of too thin on the presentation. And I want to make sure that everybody sees them. So let me go ahead and make them thicker, and then we'll go into the explanation or the technical aspects of this GANFAN. Set as default. Here we go. So there is a component to, or a calculation to these lines. And the one that originates, the calculation is the gray one. This one, which is almost horizontal, and is a 1-to-1 ratio. Every line will have a ratio right at the very end, but the gray one is the one that has a 1-to-1. If I go into the settings, the reason why it's so slanted to or on its side, it's because of this setting right here. Let's go to settings, and here we go, points per bar. It's all in reference to how many points we're measuring per each one of the candles. So you have to think in terms of, okay, what is the security that I'm looking at, and what is the price movement for this security? I'm looking at Apple, and I'm looking at a daily bar, and you're looking at, from this bottom, the price was 145, and to the top is 175. So we have about 30 points difference on this particular trend. Everybody follows me? And we have about, I'm not an account here, but I think we may have close to maybe 50 bars. This is back in March, all the way March, April, and May. So about 60 bars, probably. If I want to be exact, I can also use a horizontal line, not a horizontal line, a trend line to measure. I'm not sure how many of you have used trend lines to measure, but let me show you something pretty cool. I'm going to go here to my, let me cancel out of this. Let me go to my trend line tool, just a moment. And I'm going to click on this low where my GAN is. And I'm going to click on this high, all the way up to this high, because I'm just using it as a measuring tool. As I do that, I can click on the line and see this data tips window. The data tips window gives me a lot of information regarding where the line begins and where the line ends. But what I'm interested in is the bar count. Everybody sees the bar count at the very bottom? There's exactly 55 bars. So I wasn't really that far off. So if you want to count, how many bars are between one point and the other, you can use a trend line for that purpose. This gives me the bar count, 55. It also gives me the time span, 78 days. Remember that is counting bars, not counting calendar days. And it also tells me the net change and the percent change. The net change is about $32. So those are all great information, but it does tell me, how Apple is moving and how I should plug in some numbers here into the GAN fan. The idea behind the GAN fan is that the gray line should be closer to a 45-degree angle based on the GAN fan calculation. Again, GAN fan is not something that TradeStation created. It's been around for decades, and you can find a ton of information. But it is said that the GAN fan should have that 45-degree angle, and we have to account the price movement for that. How do we do that? Well, let's go here into the settings, because right now what is tracking is 0.05 points per bar. If we have 55 bars here and about 30-point movement, I can, do an exact mathematical division if I wanted to, but I'm going to keep my numbers rounded. So instead of looking at a 5-cent movement, let's take a look at a 1 point per bar. When I set it to 1 point and I click OK, take a look at how the white line changes, because now we're measuring 1 point per each candle in the history. Of course, that's going to be a little bit steep because there's far more candles than the point movement, and I can adjust that if I want to, but I want you to understand the ratio here. We're taking 1 point movement for each candle. If you look at the blue line, we're taking 1 point movement, we're taking 2 point movement for each candle. And that's why the line points a little bit steeper to the upside. The other blue line on the other side is taking 1 point for 2 candles. So now it's slanted a little bit more on its side. So that's where the ratio comes in, where it multiplies, the number of bars or the number of points, depending on if you're on the top or the bottom. But the gray line is the one that starts the GAN fan, and then everything else just uses a ratio in proportion. So hopefully that's clear, but it's just the way that the GAN fan calculates, and all you need to do is click once to get the GAN fan. And of course, if you go into the settings, you can point it upward, you can point it downward, down to the right or down to the left, however you want to do your analysis. In this case, I'm looking at an uptrend. So upright was the right direction to look at this. Okay, so those are settings for the GAN fan. Let's see. Well, thank you, thank you for your, your recommendations. I think many of you have used TradeStation for some time already. So thank you for going into the chat and providing your feedback. Let me remove the GAN fan. Drawing. We talked about the horizontal line, vertical line. Vertical line is pretty straightforward. We're not going to go into that. Somebody asked about the regression channel. This is a pretty cool tool. A regression channel starts with a regression line. And for those of you that are familiar with the statistics of a regression line, what it's trying to find is the best fit to all the data points on the chart. So if I drag from this low that I measured earlier to this high, it's a big price movement. The movement in itself and the time that it took, to go from 150 to 175, was very quick. In about 55 bars, it actually reached that level. So it's going to measure expected standard deviations based on that movement. So you can see the two lines right here is two standard deviations based on the movement that originated the measurement. You probably see that the beginning point of this regression line did not line up with my click. And the reason for that is because, as I said earlier, the regression line is going to try to fit itself to be at a proportionate distance across all the data points that it's being drawn on, and it kind of just fits to the direction of where the trend is going. But the standard deviation is an added calculation on the regression line, and that's why it's called the regression channel. It uses the regression line calculation, and then it plots two standard deviations, which can be modified if you want. If I want to bring that in a little bit, maybe use one standard deviation instead, I can go here into the calculation and use one instead of two. And then you can see how the channel gets a little bit narrower, because now it's using 68% probabilities that the prices are going to go beyond, those extremes. So that's the nature of the regression channel. It's all mathematical. It's all built into TradeStation, and it's just a matter of what is it that you're trying to analyze. But the calculation is basic. Let me remove this. Drawing. Time cycles are kind of interesting. Let me go here and go to the time cycle and show you what this does. It just requires one click. And when I click on the chart, I have these little nice arcs at the bottom. It creates equal distance between one line or one arc and the other. If you want to be maybe notified when a particular time line is being reached, you can use the time cycle. Let me go ahead and do something here. Let me right click on that time cycle, edit time cycle. Instead of using an arc style, I'm going to uncheck that. And what happens when you remove the arc style is that it creates it actually creates vertical lines, and you can adjust those vertical lines to be every so many bars. Let me go ahead and move my cycle here so that the very last vertical lines align with my first bar, and maybe this second one, let me drag it, let me click and drag. Okay, so if you click, let me try that again. If you click and drag to the right, it makes the time cycle wider. You can see as you're dragging, this is something really cool because I hadn't noticed this, but if you click on one of these control knots, I call them control knots because you have to click on one of those white boxes that are at the very bottom. If I click on one of those white boxes and I drag, then I have the spacing right there on the tooltips. It says 9. Let's say, for example, that I want to create a spacing of 20. There we go. Now my spacing is at 20. And I'm going to put that first or the most recent vertical bar right here on the current bar. So what this will do, notice that going into the future, it'll add those same equal distance lines. And if I double click on this arc and I go to alerts and enable the alert, every time that it reaches that time cycle, it's going to give me an alert. Whatever the reason is that you're trying to set up a time cycle alert for, but a lot of times and this goes, to our to the concept of seasonality. Sometimes every so often there may be certain behaviors in the market that you want to measure, and maybe that's something that you've identified and you want to drill down on it. So this time cycle allows you to do those segments on the chart, which I find it interesting. All right, let's go here and remove the time cycle. We have a whole class dedicated to Fibonacci, so I'm not gonna go in depth in terms of the calculation of the Fibonacci lines, but we have all the tools here. Starting with the retracement lines, which are the ones that are most popular. The price retracements just allow you to, draw from a top to a bottom or a bottom to a top, depending on where the market is trending. But if I click from this bottom to this top, then my measurement from the point that I clicked on to begin the Fibonacci to the second point to end the Fibonacci, that measurement that you see right there, that's 100%. So that movement's 100%. So then you start measuring, how the price reverses from that 100%. So if the price right here, which has not reached that very first Fibonacci level, but if it does reach that first Fibonacci level, it is said that it has retraced 23.6%. Again, these are calculated values based on the Fibonacci sequence. And many traders expect the price activity to have a reaction at those levels. And I'm not sure, and this is something that it's up to interpretation as well. I'm not sure if it's a self-fulfilling type of prophecy where everybody is expecting for something to happen, and it happens because there's so many people actively monitoring those levels. But if that's the case, still something's going to happen because there's so many people watching these levels. So being responsive to that behavior is something that every trader wants to be notified of. So again, this Fibonacci type of calculation, you can turn on alerts, and TradeStation can trigger those alerts as the Fibonacci or as the price activity touches the lines of the Fibonacci, okay? In addition to, go here, click on the lines, remove the lines. In addition to the price retracement, we have, the extensions are kind of interesting, the price extension lines, Fibonacci price extension lines, because what you're doing is that you're measuring a certain reversal, maybe. This is just a way to draw it. You're measuring a certain reversal and then projecting that into the future. Let's say, for example, that I go from this top to this bottom. So that's the measurement that I'm wanting to capture. And that projection or that movement, I'm going to put it maybe at this top. Maybe let me get a little bit closer to the current market. Okay, so let's take this one from this top to this bottom. And we want to measure this movement, but over here on this current reversal that we're experiencing at the moment. So I'm going to take my drawing tool, Fibonacci price extensions, click on this top, click on this bottom, and then bring this over here to that very top that happened recently. So, excuse me, the measurement that you took from this top to this low is what you see here reflected. Let me bring it in here, from 0 to 100. So that movement that you measured is reflected right here from 0 to 100. So those retracements that you see here are based on that measurement. And somehow you're expecting to see similarities between, reversals or corrections that happen in the past with what's happening currently. So that's the type of analysis that, or one of the type of analysis that you can do here. So that's the price extension lines. But again, those lines that you see here, again, based on the Fibonacci calculations. What else can we talk about here? All the other Fibonacci tools, again, they are all using the same Fibonacci sequence calculations and percentages. They're just being presented in different styles. You have arcs, you have fans, you have extension lines, calculators, but they're all using the same concept of percentages. And since we have a dedicated class on Fibonacci, we'll leave those details for that class. What else I wanted to show you because I wanted to explain snap mode. A lot of people don't know what snap mode does, and it's an option here right here at the bottom. Snap mode will attach your drawing tool to the closest price that it can find. So if I want to be a little bit more precise in adding my trend lines, for example, let me reset the scale here. Let's suppose that I want to add a trend line from this low to this low. Everybody sees that? Low to low. And I can come here, let's go here to trend line. I added it here to the top of my toolbar. And I can click here and then click over here. Now that seems like it's accurate, right? Or accurately drawn. But if I come over here to the bottom, let me just zoom in, see how precise was I in actually going to the bottom of that candle. Uh-oh. I'm not sure if you see it, but if you see the beginning of that line, I missed it by just this midget. Not much. So my eyes are still working really well, but it's not right on the low of that candle. It's a little bit lower than the low of that candle. Now let me go back here. Let me minimize or zoom out and go over here to this area. Let me grab my zoom and go to this area. In this candle, you can see that I'm a little bit further off. You know, I'm not quite crossing the low of that candle, but that happened because it's tough to be precise, especially when you're drawing a line on this view. You know, on this view, it seems like they're crossing the lows, but as you zoom in, you quite notice that they don't. If I remove that trend line and I come over here to drawing and I say snap mode will make it snap to the closest price. So I don't have to really be concerned about the precision, because if I select my trend line and I click somewhere close to that low, it actually, yeah, there we go. And then I click close to that low, it just snaps to it. So if I go here to my zoom and I draw, you can see how that trend line, the yellow line, starts right at the low of the bar. When I zoom out and I zoom in again on this other one, you can see that it's touching that low. So it just adds a little bit more precision as to how your drawing tools are being attached to the chart. One thing that you will see though, when you're using snap mode, yes, snap mode is on, is that you won't be able to remove the anchor points away from the bars. If I try to drag this anchor point and put it somewhere up here, let me show you what happens. I'm going to drag it, and it doesn't leave the bars because you made it snap to the bar, so it won't ever leave the bars. So a lot of times, you know, if you want to have a little bit of freestyle, then you have to uncheck snap mode so that when you click on one of these anchor points and you want to remove it from the bar, you can. Now my beginning point is not attached to any price. I'm pretty much drawing the trend line freestyle, okay? Okay, let's see some questions that are coming through. You know, Keith is asking about a tool to lay out a measured move target or taking profits. You know, Keith, look into the Fibonacci, you know, levels. A lot of users or a lot of traders use the Fibonacci retracement lines to set stops and targets because as a Fibonacci analyst would say, you know, the price movements follow the Fibonacci levels pretty closely, and you may experiment with, you know, using that. So search online for information and see if it aligns with your trading style. Recordings are done on every webinar that we do. Manolo has been sharing the link to where the webinars are going to be located. Please check that link periodically. It takes us a few days, you know, to edit and polish the recording and make it compliant before it's uploaded, but just give us a few days to do so. Victoria's asking, how do you access the zoom buttons at the bottom of the chart? Just bring your cursor towards the bottom. You see, I don't see them, but if I bring my cursor to the bottom, they show up. If I move away, they disappear. move back, they show up. So it happens automatically. And I believe that if those are also accessible, let me see. No, they're not here. But you can add them to the toolbar if you want to. The same way that I came here to customize the toolbar. If I go to, where is it? View, maybe? No, window. All these buttons can be, used. So it would be, let's see, all commands. And let's go to the Z's. Yeah, zoom in, zoom out. I can add those buttons to my toolbar. So let me show you how to do that. So we can add these two and apply. All right. So Marilyn, you asked about how to add the toolbars, exactly how I just showed you. Is there a tool to calculate risk to reward ratio for an entry exit? Amy, there is. You can use one of the OCOs on chart trading. May not be the right class to explain that. If you join me on Wednesdays for the getting started that I do at 10 a.m., I open up the floor for Q&A at the very end, and we can talk about anything related to the platform. All right. Excellent. I think that's it. Look into, what you can do with the trend lines for measurement. I think that these are very nice tools, especially, if you set a trend line like this, and then you double click on that trend line. Sometimes I enable labels. Let me show you what this does. I show the labels, and I want to show the price percentage, the net change, the bar count, and the time span. I'm going to make the font bigger so that you can see it on the screen. And this tells me, as you can see, that between point A and point B, which is what I clicked on, there's 63 days, 44 bars, a 14.2% increase, and 20 points from point A to point B. So if you're looking for a measurement type of thing, or a ruler to measure, from one point to the next, the trend lines are going to be very handy for you. And having these labels gives you a great visual of, what the price movement was, percentage movement was, and how many days or how many bars it took for the movement to realize. All right. Excellent. So that's my class for today. I hope that you guys learned something new today, and if you didn't, it's always good to review and refresh, your knowledge. So thank you guys for taking time again and being here and hearing me out. We do these classes on a monthly basis, and they're all recorded, so you have a way to play them back and look at the functionality again. Check out the calendar of events. Manolo has been sharing the link right here in the chat for any upcoming sessions and any topics that may interest you. Great having you all here, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful afternoon and a great weekend if we don't see each other anymore, okay? This week, I mean. Goodbye. Great having you.